Okay, so today the topic of this episode, we're gonna dive into the reign of Emperor Heraclius, also known as technically the last Roman emperor from the early Middle Ages. But before we get into that, we're gonna have to do a bit of a kind of a behind the scenes context sort of thing, where we're gonna have to delve into older emperors to really get into the situation that Emperor Heraclius finds himself in when he usurps the regency from Phocas. So where we begin, we have to talk about Emperor Anastasius I. Now, Anastasius I is the emperor that came after Zeno, who's mostly known for his declaration of the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476. Now, Anastasius I, we don't really have too much knowledge of his early life, as when he first became emperor, he was already considered an old man. He was the finance minister of the imperial court, and the way he was chosen was that the empress, I believe her name was Ariane, something like that, was Zeno's wife. She chose Anastasius during the ceremony at the Hippodrome, where they crowned the emperors, where the Pope, or like the Pope of the Eastern Roman Empire, would crown the emperors. So he was crowned there, and well, Anastasius I is a really interesting emperor to me because he reminds me a lot of Domitian, in the way he handles the financial policies of the empire. So I don't know if the audience would know really of Domitian, specifically of his financial policies and that, but what Domitian was mostly known for was actually micromanaging and administrating the empire, and actually fixing the economy due to inflation of the standard, or the solidus of like the Roman coin, since it was ruined by inflation.
So basically, you shave off copper of coins, put some impurities in it to make up the weight, and then use those shavings to make more coins, devaluing your currency as you go on. It's sort of like the inflation today, except you're cheating the weights instead of cheating a fiat currency.
So, even though Anastasius was starting out as an older man, he had a lot of experience.
61 years old, right?
He was 60 years old.
We're talking about another Otho here.
Who's actually confident, though. So, Anastasius was 60 years old when he came into power. Well, chosen, not like he really usurped or anything. He was actually chosen by the people.
I kind of find that interesting. He was chosen by his wife. Actually,
the wife of Zeno.
Oh, touche.
So,
but he was still chosen by the former emperor's wife. Like, now by this time, this part of Roman history, we are starting to really evolve into Byzantine history. This is Eastern Roman Empire we're talking, right?
Yes.
So here's my point. Romans didn't really look too favorably upon women at this time. So you're telling me that like everything went through fine? Like there wasn't no court politics behind it as well?
Well, you got to understand with Zeno, the issue with Zeno is, even though he was a competent emperor, he has a barbarian background. I'm not in the way as like he's a German, but at this time there's this little area in the Eastern Roman territory of Anatolia called Isauria, and Isauria is considered a backwater by fucking everybody in the empire. These people are looked down upon, basically.
So the Celtic region of Anatolia, we're talking.
No, this is like an area run by Cilicia. So it's more closer to the coast, but it's a mountainous area.
Okay.
And the issue with the people they had with Zeno, so, like, Zeno, he is an Isaurian. His real name was not Zeno. He actually took that name, because Zeno is originally a Greek name, and the Isaurians kind of have their own language. I forgot specifically what his real name was, but Zeno is not his real name. He had to change his name.
To be adopted more by the naturally speaking Greeks.
Right. And okay. The interesting part about this is that this area of Isauria was already into the empire for like 200 years. Like, it's been around for a while now. But people still consider it as like a backwater, barbaric, tribe people.
Mm.
And well, Zeno, the way he got into imperial politics and court was he was actually originally a soldier. He was enlisted into the army, but he was personally seeked out by another emperor, Leo the First. Are you familiar with Leo the First?
Vaguely familiar with Leo the First. I remember him and the Western Roman Emperor at the time had spats about where authority lay with choosing the Pope.
Something like that too, but he's also famous for... He was the one that tried to have the North African invasion to take it back to the Vandals. That Leo the First, yeah.
Of course.
I mean, it's not his fault, you know. He did get kind of screwed over by his idiot commander Basilius. That's a whole different story. So, Leo the First was the guy that kind of brought Zeno into Eastern Roman politics. And as you know, like the Western and Eastern portions, they had their issues, of course, from the split. And what Leo did was to combat the rising like imperial authority of the German foederati that were starting to actually take like almost like puppet master positions in the empire for both the Western and the Eastern part. He hired these Isaurians as kind of his crew almost like to
like his Praetorian Guard to kind of enforce as well.
That sort of thing, yes.
Okay. So
that's kind of how Zeno and those Isaurians got into imperial politics.
So due to his Germanic background and his outside background...
What was that Germanic?
Well, because of his outsider background, he couldn't lay it to his son, or he didn't have any sons?
Well, Leo had a son, Leo II, but he actually ended up dying really early on.
Well, as happens back in those times.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about Zeno. So he didn't have any sons, or did they naturally just think for the good of the empire for his wife to leave it in Anastasius' hands?
Zeno did have a son. I believe he had either one or two sons. But they both ended up actually dying. One of them died in their mid-20s, and I believe the other one died in early childhood.
Okay.
And by the time the second one, like the oldest one, died, he was already kind of an old man at that point.
Okay.
So at that point, I'm pretty sure you just kind of like, well...
It's kind of like the Trajan Hadrian question, where you don't have a primary heir, but you actually kind of care about the empire and you want to leave it in capable hands. So he left this duty to his wife, and that's what's blowing my mind right now, because when I think of Rome, I don't really... The way Romans treated women was not too highly, especially in politics.
Well, I wouldn't say he left it to his wife. He didn't really have a choice, because he was dead by then. But he was dead by the time Anastasius was crowned.
Okay.
Because he died... I forgot what he died from a disease, but he was already at an old age. And the thing is with Zeno was... He originally got usurped by the guy that kind of messed up the whole North African expedition. No, I'm so serious. This guy usurped Zeno on the basis of we needed a true Roman emperor on the throne, not this Isaurian barbarian. And well, Zeno was kind of in Isauria for a bit. Just he had to be there because he wasn't allowed inside the walls of Constantinople because he got basically chased out. And it's a whole ordeal. I'm not really too well informed on it, and I can't really get right into it. But the basic gist of it is that Zeno was an Isaurian, considered a barbarian by the people, and by the time of his death, the people wanted a true Roman on the throne. That's where Anastasius comes in.
Okay.
So what's important about Anastasius is he's the one that basically revived the Eastern Roman economy. He did this by, first, he actually reintroduced copper coins. Because, I don't know if you remember about Diocletian and his policies, but Diocletian actually would not, he had a thing where the peasants, like the people who were giving him originally like the coins, he actually opted out for them just to give him like goods and services, like actual goods,
so kind of like a barter system.
It was like a kind of a barter system at first. So they would just base the value of those goods instead of actually using like the coins. So what Anastasius did was, instead of doing that, he actually wanted the coins, And
he wanted like a more functional market economy.
Yeah, he wanted a more functional economy, and he eventually slowly reintroduced coins back into circulation. And at this point as well, there was kind of like a boom in population in Constantinople because of Christianity, due to like a lot of like the moral laws of like, oh, having a lot of children is good. And then obviously you have a lot of peasants that work, their jobs because they're forced to work a certain job because of what Diocletian put in all those years ago. So you have a lot of like workers now basically being able to help the empire, because the Eastern Roman Empire had a lot of rich resources due to having both Anatolia, the Middle East, and as well as Egypt as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So by reintroducing the coins slowly into circulation, he was getting a lot of tax funds from all his subjects, and because of that, he was actually able to bring back like an actual Roman army, and he was actually able to stop using Isaurians, barbarians, and all that. So
instead of contracting out basically mercenary barbarians, he was able to remake a standing Roman army.
Yes.
Now, quick question. Are we talking the same imperial legions, like, say, from the time of Trajan? Or are we starting to go more into, like, the Byzantium route, where kind of a mid-tier infantry, kind of standard with gladiuses and shields, but, like, badass knight cavalry? Are we in that era yet, or are we still a few years off from that?
We're slowly going into that area.
We're slow?
Slowly. It doesn't really get reformed until we hit Varus and Justinian and all those people. So what's important about this is that with the reintroduction of Romans into the army, they added I forgot how it's called.
Proconsul?
Not proconsul, but like a certain like elite group of individuals in those armies, like commanders or something.
So kind of like a knights, if we're going to talk medieval.
Kind of. So, Justin the First was part of this group of people. He enlisted into the army, and eventually made his way up into the ranks and became a pretty well-respected, high-standard officer. So Anastasius as well, it was mostly prevalent when he got older, but he actually went from, I believe, Chalcedon Christianity, which was like the standard for Orthodox Christianity, and he tried to get into, I believe, either Arian Christianity or Monophysist Christianity, which was a really big issue since the little sector of Christianity like upsetted a lot of people at that time, especially like the bishops in Antioch or Egypt, those areas. So they were all fighting control over which is the more...
Because everybody's interpreting the Bible in their own way, coming out with different sects. Even though the Council of Nicaea already happened, there's still differences of how to interpret and worship the Word of Christ in the New Testament.
And he eventually falls into this controversy of trying to kind of bring up one sect of Christianity over kind of the established.
Yeah, because whichever one is emperor he picks, that's the one that the empire is going to mainly back, and to the detriment of everyone else. So you're alienating like a good portion of your population.
It was also where he actually, I think he tried to depose one of the patriarchs of Constantinople, which really pissed off a lot of people at that time. Like, good lord, people were furious with him. But aside from kind of like the religious controversies, he was an overall very competent and successful emperor. So by the time of his death, he did leave the empire in very good standing and in very good place financially.
So from what I understand, Anastasius, he took the throne, well, he was pretty much given the throne from Zeno's wife. And what he was able to do was reintroduce copper coinage to boost up the economy, enable off the tax revenue of that, being able to take in a higher tax income, able to reform later Roman legions. So he would actually have standing armies instead of relying on Germanic or Hunnish or anyone else, basically mercenary barbarians. So it sounds like a pretty stable state to me. This guy seems like good quality.
In terms of the economic policies, yes, it was stable, but you have to take into account like the section of plebs as well that weren't happy with something to do with like sports teams, like with like the hippodrome.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that will become more focus as we get into slightly later, more familiar Byzantine empires that I'm actually kind of familiar with.
Yeah, so the blues and greens, well, I don't really know too much into it, but I know they tried to revolt against Anastasius I. I don't know what they got mad over, but...
So it's like football or soccer today, where the fans freaking just beat the crap out of each other over different teams, except the teams are also politically in line with different claimants to the throne and different factions at court.
Yeah, it's sort of like that.
Oh, God. But it becomes more prevalent more later, right?
Yeah. Oh, especially with Justinian. Yeah.
Okay. So is there any accomplishments that Anastasius had while he was on the throne, like any military accomplishments? Because from what I understand, we're talking about Rome is basically under the Lombard kingdom at this time. The Western Roman Empire is in shambles.
Well, there wasn't really any like territorial gains outside of what's already the territory of the Eastern Roman Empire, but there was internal conflicts within the Isaurian supporters of Zeno, because Zeno had a brother. His name was Longinus, and this Longinus guy, after the death of Zeno, felt like he got slighted for not kind of being a successor to his brother, so he ended up revolting, and Anastasius kind of had to deal with this guy, and kind of like a fucking Isaurian, he went back to his area and started doing some guerrilla warfare tactic sort of thing. So it lasted about 5 years, this little like civil war kind of skirmish.
Oh.
And well, he was able to suppress it, so I'd say that was an alright win for him.
Honestly, I would take a Roman emperor who puts down revolts, although it took a long time. But mainly what I like about him is that he actually got the economy, like gave the Romans basically an economy. Everyone could exchange goods and services with copper coins.
Yeah.
Again, instead of like bartering your taxes by giving the government goods. Like, he honestly sounds like a guy who's like, okay, the system's obviously not working. We need to go back to something, but we're not going to be as extravagant as before because we're not as rich as before, but we'll introduce a coinage here and we'll get the ball rolling.
No, yeah, this guy was like Tiberius. Tiberius successor of Augustus, where he was saving, early on he was saving a lot of, expenses. Anastasius was like the same way. He was saving, he wasn't spending his money on useless
sounds like somebody
garbage.
Yeah, but it sounds like the kind of guy you would want emperor, somebody who's thinking of the long term, because taking the throne at 61, you don't got that much time, especially back in like the 400s to early 500s. You don't have a lot of time. So, but it's kind of nice to know he didn't fall into decadence and actually just thought ahead and what he could do to improve the state with the time he had on the throne. That I appreciate.
There's also the thing where, how some of the Romans would pay off their barbarians so they could not attack? What Anastasius did as well, he stopped giving tribute to some of the Sassanid Persians, which ended up having the Sassanids attack him as well. Which is a good way to save money too, but you're going to piss off your neighbors.
Well, it depends how you look at it. Is it worth it losing the tax revenue of having a bunch of horsemen archers coming around and pillaging villages and sacking towns, or is it cheaper to pay them a small tribute just to kind of shut them up?
I mean, you got to think of it this way, though. Obviously, with the coin dead, and you're paying tribute to these outsiders, not only are you making it worse for your economy, now that you don't even have a standard coin that's already debased all the way to hell, but you're also angering the people in the army by doing that because you're showing weakness.
Well, not only that, their average peasants are seeing their homes and villages burned and their relatives being taken off as slaves, and even if they're in the army, they'd be kind of pissed off. Like, what? We're not going to attack them? So, but no, that's good. So he basically starts a war with the Assassinids.
A defensive war, yeah. And because of this war, he actually started 2 building projects. So first, he built kind of like this wall/fortress around the city of Dara, which is like a city in, well, it got destroyed eventually, but it's around the area of Syria.
Okay.
So it's that area. He had this little like this, I guess you could say, mini city town, and he fortified it all the way to hell. It's like super fortified, right? And another thing he is famous for is the Anastasian walls. As you know, the Theodosian walls, which are still standing today, Anastasius added an extra wall to it, which eventually fell, but...
Well, it's the third wall?
It's kind of, yeah.
So, very famously, Constantinople, or Istanbul, if you want to look at today, had 3 very famous walls, and the city was considered impregnable. It could not besiege a city. They always say it could not be taken, and you could almost say it almost couldn't. It lasted for over 1,000 years without being besieged, except for, well, we don't like to talk about it, but the Fourth Crusade. But, so you're telling me this is the emperor who added the 4th set of walls?
Yeah, he added his own set of walls. It stretched from the, I believe, it stretched from the Black Sea to the Propontis.
Oh, this is very long then.
Yeah.
Because usually you go from the Golden Horde back to the sea, you know? But you're telling me, like, this sounds like he's cutting off the entire isthmus of, right there, like, that part of Turkey from Asia, or basically protecting himself from where the Germanic invaders would come from.
Right.
Wow. All right. Sounds like a solid emperor in my book.
Yeah, so Anastasius, like all emperors, eventually died. He did not die in a violent way. He died of old age. And incredibly, he ruled for about 20 years. No, I'm so serious. Well, roughly 20 years. Historians disagree here and there, but he ruled for a very long time, especially considering his age.
No one expected the 60-year-old man to last 20 years on the throne. Well, it's okay. We got politicians today who can't seem to die or retire, so...
Unfortunately.
Well, it is what it is. But, so, this guy lasted for 20 years and basically stabilized the empire, and it was, I would say, my personal, non-professional opinion, haven't done any reading on Byzantine history, I would say he's definitely looking forward, based on what I know of other emperors. He sounds like he's a guy who's looking towards the future. Like, we're in a kind of not a good situation now. What can we do to stabilize it? And I kind of appreciate that guy in his reign. Stop paying tribute, build a standing army, and start taking the fight to people instead of giving them tribute. Sounds like a stand-up guy to me.
And before he died, there's this story, I don't know if this is true or not, but we are given the story where Anastasius didn't have any children. He was he's kind of already old at this point, so... I'm
sure if he did, he outlived them.
Well, he did have a bastard child, but he died within the Blues and Green riots.
Okay.
And which really pissed him off. But, yeah. So Anastasius, he set up this thing where it's like, it's told that he was in the capital. He was like in the palace or whatever. And he proclaimed that, he left a note on this like little bench, right? Mm-hmm. So Anastasius had 2 nephews. And his line of thinking was, whoever sat down and read this note will be the next emperor. And funny enough, none of the people that sat down found the note. And yeah, I know. As I'm reading the story, I'm like, what the hell? Like, I don't know if this is true or not, but we're given this by this.
So who picked up the note?
So the way it happened was Justin, the guy I mentioned, who was part of this like new kind of elite, Eastern Roman army. He comes through and he's the one that finds Anastasius. And well, Anastasius is like, oh, what the hell is this? Justin, you're gonna be my heir when I die. And that's basically how it happened.
Really?
That's as like basically how it happened. Yeah. according to the sources, or one of the sources.
One of the sources.
Yeah.
Seems a little skeptical, but a lot of ancient historians do like to give quite embellishing stories, but who knows? For all we know, it could have actually happened that way. Stranger things have happened. I'd like to think it did.
So this is where we transition to Justin the First, or he's also called Justin the Thracian, because he was, funnily enough, born to a peasant family. So he was not of noble birth.
So he earned his life. He went through life earning merit.
Yeah, which is why he got into the Imperial Guard and eventually rose up the ranks.
So another barbarian empire.
Well, he's not a barbarian. He was considered a Greek because, Thrace was already kind of like molded into the empire at this point.
Well, yeah, I'm sure they were all speaking Greek at that point. But still, yeah, but we're not talking like a pure-blooded Roman, not of the old aristocracy, like someone, basically a pleb of a pleb.
Yes, more or less. So, yeah, Justin the First, there's really not much to say about him, kind of, because, like, obviously he's kind of outshined by his nephew Justinian, which understandably so. But I'd say he was a really solid emperor, and he joined the Palace Guards, or the Imperial Guard, which is called the Executors at this point. I guess you could say they're kind of like the Praetorians. Not really. It's kind of its own thing at this point. But they were pretty loyal to the emperor. That's the most standard way I can say it. They were loyal to the emperor. They were not like the Praetorians at all. And Justin, while Anastasius was ruling, he was there during the Sassanid War, the little mini war where the Sassanids took over some parts, and then the Romans fought back and then retook them. So he was a part of these moments of Anastasius' reign. He was there for most of it.
Okay.
And when Anastasius died and Justin took over, he was also summoned to the Hippodrome and proclaimed the emperor. So it's kind of a tradition at this point where the new emperor of the Eastern Romans will be proclaimed at the Hippodrome due to the patriarch of whoever's serving as a patriarch at that time.
Okay.
Later, it's gonna change a bit, and there's gonna be some shady shit going on with that, but we're not at that point yet. Not yet. And yeah, there's not really much to say about Justin. One thing you could say about Justin was that he actually did have a good relationship with the papacy. He's actually one of the guys that kind of mended one of the schisms between Rome and Constantinople. So he was able to maintain a good relationship between the churches, which is one of the more notable things. So
from what I understand, the popes of the Western Roman Empire were basically complaining that the East, because the Eastern Roman Emperor is supposed to be considered the protector of all Christendom, like the head of all Christendom, at least in the eastern part, and was supposed to defend the Western Christians. And the Western popes were complaining, like, you guys aren't doing your job. So how did Justin resolve this conflict?
That, I think from what I remember, he invited one of the popes to Constantinople, and he negotiated kind of like a deal with him. Because, like, the way it worked out was they would discuss some religious matters between both the eastern and the western half. Well, I mean, at this point, really, it's just kind of barbarians all over the place. Okay. So it's just the Pope coming over. But obviously, Rome is still a religious holy site.
Well,
one
yeah.
of the most important areas of the Mediterranean.
So basically, we're talking like the very basics of Christianity. This is before like the West split apart and it became Catholic, and you could really consider Byzantium just kind of remain an Orthodox Christian, right?
Yeah, more or less.
So everyone's still roughly the same Christian with minor sects here with different discrepancies about interpretations of literature, right? Of scripture.
Yes, more or less.
So what he did basically, from what I understand, is he basically invited the popes over and goes, hey, listen, I know we're kind of splitting apart here, but we're really common here and here and here. Like, we're all Christian, basically. And settled disputes between different interpretations, and probably, honestly, gave some bribes under the table. Be like, listen, we can't help you. I'm dealing with the Assassinids. They're not Christian. I'm defending my people here. Here's some money. Hire some people. Best of luck to you.
You also got to remember that, like I said, Anastasius had a religious controversy where he kind of tried to convert people into the Monophysite heresy, as it's known, where it's the issue with the two natures of Christ, divine and then human and all that.
Whether he was human, or was he truly, like, was the Son of God born as a human, or was he the Son of God, like the deity form of Christ that we all know all along?
That was the major Monophysite question. And Justin, he basically stated, no, we're not dealing with that Monophysite bullshit. We're going back to traditional Orthodox Christianity beliefs. And for about 3 years of his first reign, he was just persecuting these Monophysites brutally as well. Like, almost it kind of reminds you of Decius from when he was persecuting Christians, like early Christians, that sort of thing.
Christians persecuting Christians. Rome still hasn't lost its touch.
So yeah, the Pope of Rome really liked Justin's stance and how he was dealing with the Monophysites. So that's how he actually ended up fixing the schism between Rome and Constantinople, for now at least.
Oh, so the enemy of my enemy is my friend. We're cool again. All right, well, that's Justin the First. I would say, well, he mended at least Christian ties with the West. And if you think about it at this time in the West, from what I know, is literacy is on its way down, and it's actually the church that's going to keep literacy in the Latin written form alive at this time. So mending that with the East is still pretty important. So at least legacy-wise, I'd say that's pretty good.
Yeah. He didn't reign as long as Anastasius.
9 years isn't that long of a reign, but still, he got something done.
And then another, I guess, notable thing you could say about Justin was he did help the people of Antioch with relief, as Antioch was destroyed by an earthquake. And this is a fucking huge earthquake, dude. This shit killed so many fucking people. And we're talking like into the 200,000s of people have died from an earthquake. Like, that many amount of people dying from a natural disaster today would be like a worldwide tragedy.
Yeah, but you also got to remember 200,000 when back then I think like the total population of Earth was still under 100 million. Like, per capita, it killed a lot more people back then. Strictly per capita.
A really funny part about this is Procopius, the guy that kind of wrote the histories of Justinian as well as like Justin. He said that by the time Justin became the decline in old age, that he was pretty much advancing into an idiot, and that any of his incompetence was from mental deficiency.
So we're talking like autism, in other words.
He's saying that, oh yeah, he's kind of losing his marbles. Which, ironically enough, technically, this isn't the first Justin who's going to lose their mind, as you will see down the road.
So, want to move on to his son?
Yeah. Well, he didn't have any children, actually.
Oh, so...
Justinian is actually his nephew.
So, let's move on to his nephew.
So, obviously, Justinian's pretty popular, famous for, his reconquest, or his attempt to reconquest.
Well, let's start off with like him getting let's start with his father's or his uncle's death, going into how he got the throne. Is there anything particular about that, or was it like, okay, you're the closest living male heir who's in reigning age, you're in?
No, I'm pretty sure it went pretty much smoothly.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry for my interruption. Continue.
I mean, there's obviously the thing with the controversy kind of where he married a prostitute, but Justin because Justin was still alive at this time, so yes, that Justinian the First did actually end up marrying a prostitute. I don't really know. I mean, you love who you love, I guess, at that point, but there was a law in place where nobles couldn't marry plebeian women. But since Justin kind of like saw that Justinian was pretty much going to be his heir, he knew when he died that Justinian was going to take over, and he knew that Justinian was this well-educated, smart person. He kind of just took exception to the fact that Empress Theodora was a prostitute, so he kind of just let that shit slide.
Well, also, I think he saw something in Justinian, and to be fair, his wife wasn't really a prostitute. She was a performer, like a street performer. Yeah, almost kind of like the celebrities of our time. She worked in plays, went around to perform plays and such as that. Those people on the side had a prostitute because, playing plays didn't really pay the bills. So a lot of the times these people would be lack of a better word, basically deplorables, because to pay the bills, in order to act and fulfill your dream and to show people, you also had to do some labor on the side,
What's also really interesting is that, yes, Justin did actually end up becoming a bit more senile. So Justinian did basically kind of serve as his regent. Started
like taking the reins, to give Justin a break.
Yeah. So obviously, Justinian's really famous for mostly his military conquest and his dream of forming the.
I would say
Roman
it's
Empire.
more for a certain particular night in Constantinople, and I would actually give a lot of his conquest victories to Belisarius.
No, it's true. Yeah, of course.
I mean, okay, full disclosure, I'm not a very big expert on Byzantium history as my friend here. Byzantine history is my friend here, but I will say I do know a fair bit about Justinian. So, basically, when Justinian took the throne, from what I understand is the empire was just good enough, and Justinian had a plan to reform the classical Roman Empire.
And then you also got to remember, they still had all this money from Anastasius as well. So they had this entire treasury filled of all this wealth and gold from Anastasius' economic policies, which is exactly the reason why Justinian was able to go with his dream of reclaiming the former territories of the empire. So this is why I wanted to talk about Anastasius, because it actually all ends up going back to him, because he's the one that really jump-started the early empire.
So
of course, I'm going to give credit to Zeno as well.
He put coinage back into he put copper coinage back into the market, created a tax link, reformed the legions under his own population. Basically, if you want to go Machiavellian on it, having his own troops in his own armies instead of relying on mercenaries. So right now, the Roman Empire is the Eastern Roman Empire. It's starting to show some muscle. It's actually looking good. And this is all around the time of 527 to 565, basically.
Yes, that sort of period, which you gotta say, this is a really interesting period for Byzantium, because Justinian was a larger than life person, but a lot of the things surrounding him, like the world he was a part of, the world that he was in, it also revolved around him too. Like you have the Sassanid Persians were starting to, as well, just start to bother the Romans even more than they already did before Justinian. They're starting to get more confident that they can eventually take over more of the empire.
Well, I'd be pissed too if someone cut off my free income, backed all the way to Anastasius, cutting off my free income and stopping my tribute. I'd be kind of pissed too. I'd send some horseshoes after you too.
And I think, if I remember correctly too, during, I believe, the reign of Justin, the Sassanid Shah at the time, I forgot his name. I think it might have been Ardashir or Kavad or one of those people. He actually sent in one of his sons, Khosrow I. This is important. So Khosrow I actually got adopted by Justin's family as kind of like this. It's almost like a foreign exchange student, if we're talking about a modern term. So he actually ended up...
So are we talking like ancient hostage?
Yeah.
Kind of? Okay.
And the funny part is that the Shah that sent his son over to the Eastern Roman Emperor, he kind of expected that his son will be treated well received, but of course they treated him like a fucking barbarian either way.
So back in ancient times, when you're talking about hostage giving, just to bring up one of the things I know best about, it's kind of like Philip of Macedon, Alexander's father, being sent over to Thebes as a hostage. And when he was in Thebes, he was actually educated. They taught him, they treated him well, because the thinking behind it is, if you're gonna ask foreign dignitaries to send their sons as hostages, you're gonna educate them, train them up, so when they eventually go back and rule, they're friendlier and more sympathetic to your causes and your desires of your rule. That's the thinking behind it. Well, I think Justin kind of messed up with Khosrow.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're stopping the tribute to the Sassanids, you have to compromise in some way. And well, he kind of just had to take him in, and unfortunately, it really did bite him in the ass.
So wait, he had to take in him because he stopped paying tribute to the Sassanids. How did that work?
Well, I mean, I just remember like reading about this where it's like, oh yeah, this Khosrow guy ends up knowing more about Byzantium because he actually spends time inside of the city and stuff from just, I don't know, like being part of it. So
he's in Justin's court, he meets Justinian, and they're treating him like crap.
Yeah.
But okay, so what I'm guessing is, so did Byzantium like win some battles and like kind of subjugate the Turks a little bit and had them like, that's why they had to send over his son? Or was it kind of like, we're going to send you our son?
I think it was more like a diplomatic type of thing.
Okay, to buy some years of peace, because when Justinian took the throne, they were at peace at the moment, correct?
Yeah, they had this eternal peace, air quotes, eternal peace. We already know what happens. It ends up getting breaking.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so obviously Justinian's famous for his dream of trying to reclaim the former Western Roman territories, as well as his buildings like the Hagia Sophia, and among other things like the legal code, which is the Justinianic code. And no, I've been seeing this a lot lately, but a lot of people are really criticizing Justinian's conquest of Italy and saying that his usage of the money that he had from like the Anastasian treasury, he really like depleted the resources of the empire. How do you feel about that?
Well, kind of reminds me almost, it sounds to me like when Justinian took the throne, he realized that the empire's doing good, the tax revenue is doing pretty decent, he's got a lot of treasure under him, and he's got a decent army, like a he's got native troops, and the army's looking pretty good. And he's seeing the West in complete chaos. He's at peace. His biggest threat to his east is pretty much quelled, like through the quote-unquote internal peace. I think he sees an opportunity to gain some new lands and increase his tax value. I think he sees it, and also to justify it to the people of the East, he could say, hey, we're taking the Eastern Roman Empire. Now, in hindsight, due to circumstances of everything that happened, as I wouldn't really consider it a good move. I would say consolidate your resources and keep building that wealth and branch out, almost kind of slimy. Take piece by piece. Don't go for the jugular. But he wants to go for the jugular. He wants to reclaim Rome. Honestly, he could have done it, but I think he neglected the East too bad. Not to mention the plague, too.
I mean, the plague, I don't think the plague was his fault. I think...
No, it wasn't his fault, but the thing is, I think he was overly ambitious with... He's basically between two fronts. He's got an opportunity in the West, but he's got a problem in the East, and I don't care what they say about the internal peace, you're always going to have to watch your eastern flank. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like Poland. Like, you got ambitious... It's like Poland in 1939. Like, you got Germany coming, but you also know you got Stalin right there. I mean, what are you going to do? Except, unlike Poland, he is very strong. And Germany's very weak. So, I don't know. I think it makes for a brilliant, good history. And I think his heart was in the right place. And I think he wanted to, like, emulate the old traditional Roman emperors. Like Trajan or Augustus or Caesar. And reclaim the Roman Empire to reunite it, you know? Because because Rome has been fallen now for like about 100 years.
Oh no, it's been 100 years.
Yeah. It's almost been a complete 100 years since the official Western Roman Empire fell. And his thinking is, okay, well, we almost basically got North Africa. Why not just springboard into Italy and retake the old Roman Empire? It's pretty ambitious, and I don't think he could have done it without the help of his famous general, Belisarius.
Oh, okay. I just read this right now. So on the point about the Khosrow kind of getting into the Constantinople court, I was actually wrong about that. There was actually negotiations between both Justin and the Persian king Kavad, and Kavad had an offer where he wanted Justin to adopt Khosrow. But I believe that Justin I just declined that request, which, if you're looking at this from now, it could have potentially been where Khosrow could have been more amicable to the Byzantines if he was actually accepted by them.
Are you sure it wasn't a treaty to have Khosrow eventually rule the Roman, the Eastern?
No.
Okay.
No, this was like...
I'm about to say, that's... How bad did the Assassinates kick the Eastern Roman Emperor's ass?
No, not at all. But I believe it was like a diplomatic type of thing. But
to try to tie the families together?
Or I guess more like, kind of like a friendly thing where it's like, oh, you learn about the Byzantine court and see how things are, it's that sort of thing. Kind of like an exchange, maybe. But it's more like one-sided, but I'm pretty sure Justin, declined that request and it just fell apart.
Well, just to get into it, like, I'm not that familiar with the Assassinids. I know they come from a very Eastern, pretty much proto, Persian Empire sort of feel. They feel like they're the successors of the Achaemenid Persian Empire back in the day. Like, they think that basically Alexander was the hiccup, and then a bunch of stuff happened until they reclaimed their homeland. That's where I think the Assassinid mindset was. They think they're like the Achaemenid Persian Empire 2.0.
Right.
Okay? Because like the Parthians were a nomadic tribe, and then you had this whole mess with the Greeks and the Seleucids and all that. So from what I could tell is they had their whole Eastern point of view, so they might have just sent Khosrow over there to get a Greek and Latin education and to learn the classics over there.
Maybe,
probably.
Possibly.
Well, was Khosrow like the apparent heir, or was he just one of the sons?
I'm pretty sure he was like the main son of Kavad. I'm pretty sure he may have had more. When he ended up dying, I think he was briefly succeeded by this other guy, but that didn't.
So he wasn't the main heir,
no, he was actually his son. Like, he was like his actual blood heir.
Okay.
But I think at the point where Kavad ended up dying down the road, some other guy kind of took over for like a little bit until Khosrow ended up taking over himself.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, Justin kind of sounds like a moron to me, because it's like, why would you treat a possible heir to, like, your biggest enemy and biggest threat like shit?
I'm pretty sure this is when he was older, so we can just lead it up to mental deficiency, senileness, as the Catholic Roman writers would like
so
to put
you
it.
sent the heir to your biggest rival back to the country with a bad taste in his mouth, and Justinian's looking towards the west, about to leave his east wide open, thinking, oh, Khosrow, we were cool, like, do you mind just holding down the fort? Maybe go east to the Indus Valley.
I'm pretty sure he paid the Assassinates to actually defend against the Iberians, of the Caucasus, those group of people. I'm pretty sure he gave like some tribute to them, so that also may have like played into like that, and as well as the Eternal piece. But
okay,
yeah.
Well, long story short, like what you told me is when Justinian went to go conquer the West, I think it's kind of like a bridge too far sort of deal. Like, yeah, but I'm not taking anything away from Belisarius. He is probably the best general of that era, one of the best generals of that era. Masterfully done, kicking the shit out of the Lombards, the remnants of the Vandals, the Visigoths, like kicking the shit out of all these barbarians and taking Rome, like, what, 3 times?
Yeah.
And then going back to the east, kicking some Assyrian, the Assassinate ass, and kicking them back. Yeah. I know we're not going through all the battles. Maybe we'll do a video just on that whole war.
I just know the general reigns of these emperors, more or less. If you want to get into battles, I'm going to have to really look into that.
But yeah, but like, from what I could tell in any reading I've ever done on it, it just seems like it was a bit too much, and it wasn't worth all the money. But it seems like Justinian thought if he's going to do it, he's going to go for broke. But going for broke overextended his lines. Because you're holding down North Africa, you're holding down Sicily, you're holding down basically almost all of Italy with the Lombards there who aren't nothing to seize at. And the people of Rome, the funny thing is, the people of Italy and even the people in the Roman city, in Rome at the time, were like, with all due respect, dude, we were kind of doing good. Unless you're here to stay, and unless you, Belisarius, are here to stay with all your troops and hold us down, there is no point of you being here. Because, like, we'd be okay with it, but it just doesn't seem like you're going to be able to stay here. I mean, honestly, it kind of sounds like Perseus, one of Alexander's successors, when he went into Italy. Like, I truly believe he probably could have beaten the Romans and actually helped the Greek city-states, but he got pulled to Sicily, and then he got, after he got his ass kicked by the Romans.
Pyrrhus?
Yeah, Pyrrhus of Euripides.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, if he would just focus and stay there, I think he could have done it, but the way that Eastern Rome was set at the time, I think he just overextended himself a bridge too far. I think he could have extended his holdings in other areas.
No, I think he could have consolidated much more efficiently his gains.
If he just cut it back. Like, maybe take Sicily and just southern Italy and just leave Rome for another day. Like, don't go too far up against the Lombards. Let them sit there, let them stew. Maybe, like, play factions off, but I think it's just Rome was just a bridge too far. Just to keep hammering that, movie quote home, but it was just too far. But honestly, as far as like the actual conquest goes, Belisarius, A-tier general. Like, if we were going to do a super tier list, super tier right there. Justinian, on the other hand, because it's not the general's fault. It's honestly the whole entire strategic thing that kind of falls right on Justinian's lap.
I mean, I guess he didn't.
And he invited himself open to attacks in the east with the Assassinates.
Yes, it's true. But the thing is, though, he has the merit of being an amazing administrator. You can't take that away from him.
No, I don't. But at the end of the day, like, when I'm judging these emperors, I'm kind of thinking myself as a peasant. Okay, this guy who says he's going to reclaim the Roman Empire. Say I'm like a mid-40s peasant. My son is out for war in the West. I have assassinates coming down and pillaging villages from what I hear from the East. And prices of everything is rising, and money is becoming more and more scarce by the end of his reign. Not to mention the Black Death. Now, we can't blame him for that. In hindsight, looking back, we can't blame him for the plague. But back then, people didn't know any better, because it's just like looking at the times. Yeah, when dark shit happened like that, even with a Christian point of view, you tend to go and blame the emperor for that.
Yeah.
And not to mention, there was a particular night that Justinian is pretty famous for. Do you want to tell that story?
No, you go ahead. You seem very enthusiastic to.
Well, he's one of the only Byzantine empires I actually know quite a fair bit about, because he's like the guy who tried to press the restart button on the Roman Empire, but the button was just too far away. You know? Well, one particular evening in Constantinople, there's political factions, and each political faction also happens to be kind of like a football team, except chariot racing. So in Constantinople and in Rome, with the Maximus Circus, the biggest thing, the biggest sport, basically football, soccer, whatever, the big sport during the day was chariot racing. And in Constantinople, you had very famous teams, except instead of like names like Panthers, Steelers, or the Germans or the Spanish, no, they went by colors. Now, very famously one night, there was a chariot race between the greens and the blues. Well, a particular chariot race went awry, and these two teams, all their fans, decided to get in a brawl. Now, the thing about it back then was these chariot racing teams, the Reds and the Blues, they had giant greens and blues. They had giant followings, and like, not only did these guys disagree, they disagreed about everything you can. It's like the Democrats supporting the Green Bay Packers and the Republicans supporting the Bears. Obviously, I got those two confused because, let's face it, Republicans would probably support the Green Bay Packers. But anyways, that's kind of the sense. And let's just say there was a bad call on the football field, and let's just say it united a civil war between Illinois and Wisconsin. Except this happens in Constantinople.
Which, let's just say they have a population of about 1 million people at this point of time, or somewhere close to that. This is a huge fucking city.
Back in 500 AD, this is no joke. It is probably the most populated city. Yeah, it's probably the most populated, one of the most populated cities on the face of the globe. So you got over 1 million people stacked in Constantinople at the time, and basically one quarter of the city is trying to kill the other quarter, and the rest of the city's like, well, we're starting a riot, and the whole city goes up in fire over these two sports teams. Very famously, Justinian sees what's going on and sees everything falling apart, and he goes, okay, screw this, grab the treasury, I'm out. Very famously, he gets onto the dock with his entire entourage and his wife. What's her name? Theodora. Very famously, he's just about to board the ship, and Theodora goes, no, screw that. You go if you want, but I am going to stay here, and I'm either going to rule or die as an empress. Go and do as you must. And I guess that's when Justinian finds his balls.
And he basically sicks Belisarius on this crowd of people. And let's just say 30,000 people just go bye-bye.
It's basically the equivalent that the Republicans with the Bears, the Packers. I'm a Bears fan, forgive me. The Republicans with the Green Bay Packers and the Democrats with the Bears go at it, and they're killing each other with rifles, swords, whatever you name it. And then the U.S. Army goes, no, we ain't having this. And the president sicks the U.S. Army on these two states. And 20,000 people are put to the sword to quell this rebellion.
Yeah. So basically what I'm trying to say here, I know we talked a lot about these other emperors, and we started off kind of in the way back to Anastasius I, even though this is kind of a topic that's going to mostly revolve around Heraclius. The point I'm trying to make here is that Anastasius was the first, kind of jump-started the early empire with his financial policies and got him into a really great position. And Justin and his successor, Justinian, were the ones that kind of took advantage of the wealth that Anastasius got together. And by the end of Justinian's rule, by the time of his death, let's just say that Anastasian money has basically more or less depleted. There's not much left. And because of this, and the fact that Justinian didn't have any sons, we're thrown into, again, this idea of having your nephews or a close family member take over the reign. And that's where we get into Justin II. Now, before we can actually get into Justin II, there's this really interesting part where, so Justinian had a cousin, this guy named Germanus, and he served in the army with Belisarius. He was one of the commanders. And this Germanus guy was a pretty competent soldier. And Germanus had a son who's also named Justin. So it's a tale of two Justins, basically. You have Justin, the nephew of Justinian, and you have this other Justin, the son of Germanus. And allegedly, before the death of Justinian, Justin I, Justinian's nephew, and Justin II, the son of Germanus, they came together and had this verbal agreement where whoever became emperor, that person who didn't become emperor, the other Justin, will be the right-hand man of whoever became emperor.
So Justin II was supposed to be the right hand of Justinian.
Well, they're both Justin, but yeah, the nephew of Justinian was into an agreement with the other Justin that he would serve as the right-hand man if the other Justin became the emperor. Well, in true Roman fashion, nephew of Justinian kind of fucks over Germanus' son, Justin, and he gets exiled and executed eventually in Egypt. So, goodbye, Justin, the other Justin. He's dead. Germanus is also dead at this point, too, so Justin is the only guy that has sole control of the empire. And I gotta say, Justin, even though he's kind of like a blip in the Eastern Roman history, between kind of like the reigns of Justinian to a more popular guy like maybe Maurus, and the precursor of Phocas and Heraclius, Justin II had a kind of an interesting reign. So obviously, since the Anastasian money kind of just went poof after Justinian basically used most of it for his wars and because of the plague as well, he kind of had to find a way to save more money. And, well, he was kind of forced to raise taxes. Which, if you're raising taxes at that time as either an emperor or a king, you're not going to make anybody happy. You're going to piss off a lot of fucking people.
Yeah, I just got attacked from the east. You failed to attack in the west, which cost me a pretty penny. And you're telling me I have to pay more now? And what did you gain out of all that? Oh, let's not to mention the plague and those riots in Constantinople. I wonder how much property damage that cost.
So obviously Justinian can really answer for his usage of the Anastasian money on all these sorts of things and has to deal with it. And Justin, now being the emperor, the younger, nephew of Justinian, now he has to deal with all this shit.
Justin II.
Justin II, yes. I mean, he was going to be a Justin II either way, but, nephew of Justinian. So Justin II has to deal with all this shit. And then also you got the Sassanids. They're back now.
They're still attacking.
They're still here. And you know who's leading them now? Khosrow I. Remember that guy?
So you want to leave off that basically the Eastern Roman Empire was on the upswing, took a big gamble, lost all, and is now taking some rough times, dealing with the aftermath of the plague. Well, still dealing with the plague, if we're going to be honest, and has the Sassanids breathing down their necks.
Yeah, and, they started asking for money, for tribute, and you also got obviously, we're taking notice of, the East as kind of the big number one enemy of the Eastern Roman Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, but you also got to remember, you have Avars and Slavs to the west as well, and now they're demanding money as well. So you're this guy, Justin II, nephew of Justinian. You basically have no money, and you're basically almost getting demanded tribute by these two other these two other groups of people. One that's as an empire that could rival your strength, and another group of barbarians that hail from the steppes and as well as the Slavs. And you're kind of forced to raise taxes, and now you got to deal with this. Justin, what he did was he put his foot down. He was like, "No, I'm not paying tribute to these guys. Fuck them. I have to save money. There's no other way to go around it." And because of this, the Sassanids attack him. They start a war, and you remember how I mentioned the walls around this great city of Dara, these huge fortress walls?
Yeah.
Well, Khosrow I gets to Dara, completely fucking demolishes that. The walls are gone, the city's destroyed, it's fucked. It's gone. Dara is no more. And, well, Justin, realizing how much he fucked up by not paying tribute to the Sassanids and how he's losing all this territory to them, he kind of just goes fucking insane. He loses his shit. He literally loses his mind. And I mean this in the straightest way possible. This guy goes from being normal person, and he goes from this emperor all the way to this kind of not there. I don't know how to put this.
Almost like escaping into his mind, just staring off into spaces, or was he doing some really crazy stuff?
He was doing some crazy shit, like biting people. He had a tendency of biting other nobles. What else? He would kind of like go into these fits of like rage as well, and he had to be calmed down with either like a song or some sort of tune. And then towards the end of his reign, he had to be driven around in this little cart around the imperial court.
Sounds like the pressure really got to him.
So Justinian inadvertently fucked over his nephew by taking a big gamble at the western half of the western half of the barbarians, so of like Italy and
trying to reconquer Rome.
Yeah, so his nephew, he loses his mind, and he's not able to dictate
he doesn't have the fortitude. He was not the right man for the job at the time.
Well, he started off all right, and then the pressure really got to him. Like, just having no money really, really screwed him over big time.
Yeah, well, it's the old saying, what's cheaper? Fighting a war on two fronts or paying tributes on two fronts and raising the taxes? Either way, you're raising the taxes. Because you either got to raise the taxes to maintain your armies to fight off these people, or you're paying them tribute. And then you still got to pay your armies. So it's kind of like pick your poison. And who knows, maybe he could not make the tributes.
So Justin, in his moment of madness, not being able to rule the empire, obviously the dudes went to his wife. So his wife started to be almost as his regent, and she was the one dictating all his reign at that point.
All matters of state.
As well as this other guy who was this soldier's executor named Tiberius. He becomes important after Justin dies. He actually ends up becoming the emperor as well. But yeah, so Justin, during this moment of madness, he actually at one point kind of became conscious and ended up giving the reign to Tiberius. So he abdicated basically without having to get usurped. So he was able to pass over the power of the empire to Tiberius III. Well, Tiberius II. Tiberius III is another guy, but we'll have to get to him way later. And yeah, that is all we have for today. Unfortunately, I kind of spent too much time talking about these guys, but once we get to Tiberius II and to Mars and Focus, then that's where we can really start talking about Heraclius' situation.
So it's all lead up to our boy Heraclius.
Yeah, it's a long video.
It's a brief stint through some Byzantine emperors, but basically from Zeno all the way to Justin II, it's a good coverall leading up to our boy Heraclius. So, thank you. I learned some things today.
Yeah. At that note, we're going to have to end it here. Thank you for your time.